The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the Bliss Business Podcast series, Scaling with Purpose. I'm Steven Skash here with Tulio Saragusa. Hey, Tulio.
Hello.
So this is our 10-minute podcast series where we explore how to embed purpose into every level of your organization. Today's episode is all about purpose-led leadership in times of crisis. We'll discuss how leaders can maintain alignment with their purpose during challenging times and why crises can actually be opportunities to demonstrate purpose. So let's get started. So when we think of crisis, you might think economic downturn, public relations challenge, global pandemic, but it can even be something small with a team or even just your individual job. We've all had those moments, right? So this is when organizations and individuals can find themselves kind of at a crossroads. Do you stick to the purpose or do you compromise it to weather the storm? The truth is, these are the moments where purpose truly shines. I definitely agree with that. I know sometimes you just don't know what the right thing to do is. And I often say, do the loving thing, but yeah, what's your company's purpose? Yeah.
It's often been said that trial produces endurance. So crisis is really a test. It's testing an organization's commitment to its purpose. And any organization that's committed to a purpose will go through these tests. It's inevitable. It will happen. So it's easy to talk about purpose when things are going well. Everything's in alignment. Everybody's happy. But when there's a crisis, the purpose becomes, is it a guiding light? Or is it something you just kind of, we'll deal with that when things get back to normal? So, and this is the real test, right? So, leaders can be guided by the purpose to make really difficult decisions. They can rally their entire teams when they're guided by purpose. And they can show their stakeholders that they're committed to standing on what they stand for. So it's a trial, but it's also an opportunity to really come out of it shining, as you had mentioned, brightly or brighter for being committed to something greater than just making profits.
Yeah, I like that trial.
People reward that. People feel good about that and you get rewarded for that.
I want to underline that point, trial, but also an opportunity. So
yes,
think of it as an opportunity if you can. So let's start exploring why purpose is so important during a crisis. Tulio, what are some of the things that come to mind here?
Well, first, it really provides clarity, right? When a crisis happens or uncertain times, this is where it's very easy for leaders and teams to feel very overwhelmed by competing priorities or shifting circumstances. So in those moments, like, what do we do, right? So when you use your purpose as your North Star, then it's not as challenging. You're not as conflicted because it's clear. This is our North Star. There's no, what do we do? We know what we need to do to stay on point with our North Star. So that really becomes a clear framework for making decisions. If you had a boss that wanted things a certain way, and if you didn't do it that way, it could cost you your job, right? And you're motivated to do things that way, whether you like it or not, right? So in essence, the purpose becomes the new boss, right? And that boss wants things done a certain way, but this isn't a tyrant. This is actually a really nice boss, an enlightened boss that rewards you for fulfilling that purpose. So that's really important, is to stick with those. And then second, that purpose, when you stick with it, even in difficult times, builds trust. When leaders stay true to their purpose, they demonstrate integrity, consistency, and this strengthens the trust with employees, customers, and stakeholders. So it is truly an opportunity to rise above and show that you have backbone, and people reward that with trust, with intimacy. So use that North Star and stick with it, because it will reward you even in difficult times.
Yeah, that's true. And I'll add a third area here. Purpose inspires resilience. So when people feel connected to a higher purpose, they're more likely to stay motivated and focused, even in the face of adversity. And so it just reminds everyone of the why behind their work, which can be, incredibly powerful and even grounding during these chaotic times. So, Tulio, how can leaders practice purpose-led leadership during a crisis?
And this is also a differentiation point between companies that are purpose-led and those that are not. When crisis happens, often in traditional companies that don't have a well-defined purpose, you don't hear from the leaders. They're sort of hiding out. They're dealing with the issues, and everybody's just nervous to no end, trying to figure out what's happening. But in a purpose-driven organization, you want to reaffirm the purpose loud and clear. During a crisis, it's important for leaders to continuously communicate to the organization what their purpose is. And this isn't the time to let purpose fade into the background. Instead, you want to use this opportunity to remind your teams and stakeholders and customers why your organization exists and how your actions are aligned with that purpose, especially during really challenging times. That's when you really want to remind people why they're there. Because during challenging times, sometimes people get nervous, they get scared, they leave. Investors get nervous, they get scared, they leave. But if you are continuously reminding those stakeholders why you're doing it, what's your purpose as a business, what's your North Star that you're guided by, you're reminding them why they're on board. And that's really an important element to surviving, in some cases, those difficult situations or thriving through them.
Yeah. A great example is, you remember we did the Scandal show it was the travel hospitality edition, and Airbnb was in there. And I think they had the issue with like racist hope. And what we all kind of agreed was that they really navigated that pretty well. Like their response to it was just kind of a wrong approach. And, also during the pandemic, when travel came to a halt, instead of panicking, Airbnb, they leaned into their purpose of creating a world where anyone can belong anywhere. And I think that kind of, during those two crises, that kind of purpose just aligned them through each of those scandal sort of problems, or the scandal on the one and then the pandemic on the other. So they're both crises. So they launched new initiatives during the pandemic, like online experiences to help their hosts stay afloat, and kept their messaging aligned with their core mission. That clarity of purpose helped them navigate the crisis, and at the same time reinforced their brand identity.
Exactly. Also, that's another strategy. Make purpose-driven decisions. In a time of crisis, leaders are often forced to make very difficult decisions. Let's face it, cutting budgets, scaling back operations, or even pivoting strategy. The key is to ensure that those decisions align with your purpose. And what you want to ask yourself is, does this action reflect our values? Does it move us closer to our long-term vision, even if it's challenging in the short term? Those two questions will always guide you in the right direction. And then leaders can kind of also use this approach to evaluate trade-offs. For instance, during a crisis, you might have to reduce spending. But on a purpose-driven company, you'll prioritize cuts that have the least impact on your core mission or on the community that you serve. So purpose acts as a moral compass. It really does during tough time. And that's what you want it to be, a moral compass during difficult times.
Yeah. And I think, like we mentioned, this is an opportunity to show, not just tell what your organization stands for. So your actions speak louder than words, and how you respond in a crisis will define your reputation for years to come. And that might mean stepping up to support your employees, contributing to your community, or finding creative ways to fulfill your purpose under extremely challenging circumstances. But, these are defining moments, and they reveal the true character of an organization and its leaders. So by staying aligned with your purpose, you not only navigate the crisis more effectively, but you also strengthen your organization's identity. And you're
that saying, show me the money, Stephen, it should be changed to show me the purpose.
Show me the purpose. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to stray from it during these times, because then people are just like, yeah, you weren't about it. You said you were for so long, and then when spotlight's on, you weren't about it. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of Scaling with Purpose. We went through how purpose can guide leaders through crisis, providing clarity, trust, and resilience. And in our next episode, we'll explore building purposeful leadership teams and how to create leadership structures that align with and support your organization's purpose. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with others, and we'll see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.